Welcome to our quarterly education webinar focused on caring for aging parents. My name is Chris Flores, and along with my partner, Steve Fortin, we own Three Corners Capital, a financial services firm located in Cincinnati, but serving clients across the country. So no matter where we find you, we're glad you're able to join and enjoy this content. One of the advantages of working with a planning team like ours is that we've worked with countless people on caring for their parents, or perhaps just as often caring for themselves or their partner. An important note is that, one of the values we add to clients is helping navigating their care for parents or within their own personal situation, through estate planning, through long-term planning, care planning, and coordinating with, the trusted advisors like an attorney. And my point would be that you don't need to do this alone. You can count on us to help. And we want to just underscore that this is these are kind of the topics where we would want to come alongside you. So why are we hosting this topic? Well, one, we're continuing to see the demographic trends in our client base, and whether a client's in their 20s or 30s and working with an aging parent or someone in their 60s, we're all facing the reality that care needs will arise for ourselves personally or for our family members. And it's in our experience that those who are the most prepared and who have given the most consideration to this topic fare the best. For married couples, there's about a 75% chance that at least one partner is going to need care. And if you're single, the stats say that's about 51% chance of needing some type of care. And this webinar is an introduction to this topic. For questions related to your personal situation, please reach out to us afterwards or to one of our panelists speaking today. Generally, during the course of a year, we're going to be bringing this up in terms of long-term care planning at least once, and especially for those that are nearing or in retirement. So without further ado, let me introduce our first speaker. Jennifer Griffin Anstead is an attorney with Wood & Lamping and specializes in Medicaid and estate planning law. She's a certified specialist in elder law, and for many years has served on the Cincinnati Bar Association's Elder Law Committee. So suffice it to say, she has excellent experience on this topic. And Jennifer, I'll pass it along to you.
Good morning. Yes, I am an elder law attorney. So just a little bit about me. What that means is I help people with all stages of traditional estate planning, but also helping people who have specific issues dealing with aging. So long-term care planning, paying for health care. So a little bit broader than just your traditional estate planner. So that's what I do. And I'm looking forward to talking to you all today.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. So as you think about your space in this work, give us some high-level overview of what are key trends that you're seeing in the elder law space.
Oh, okay. So one thing that we're seeing a lot of recently would be more and more sort of conflict within families. So we're seeing an increase in sort of siblings fighting with each other, whether that's during their parents' lives or after death. And I don't know exactly what that is caused by. I don't know if it's you know people are short on money. I don't know if it's inflation, but we're seeing a lot of that. So what we really try to stress to our clients is make sure that you have plans in place, good estate plans, make sure that you have nominated someone to serve as your power of attorney for finances and also for your healthcare powers of attorney so that your kids aren't fighting if you have a health crisis.
Great. Are there, as you think about all of those experiences, are there things people should be thinking about in advance? I think about myself, for example. Both my parents are living. I have, my brother and I both live in different parts of the country. We may end up at some point having to work through a situation. Are there things that, people should be working with in their family to address this in advance? I mean, and again, just another practical example in our conversations with clients, we have some especially parents who are older, maybe in their 80s or even 90s, where the culturally talking money or talking estate planning was kind of taboo. And that has created challenges in terms of adult children coordinating and understanding what's going on. So maybe shed some insight into the conversations you're having and what you see as best practices in navigating that dynamic.
Absolutely. So what we tell our clients is it's key to plan ahead. So we want you to have a will, perhaps a trust, definitely a good financial power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney. I also want my clients to make sure that they review all of their assets and update ownership of those assets, as well as the beneficiary designations, so that there's no doubt what you want to happen if you are disabled or when you pass away. It is a taboo sometimes in families, but what we tell our clients is the more direction you can give your kids, the better. We strongly encourage our clients to speak to their family about their wishes. So, to let their kids know this is what we want to happen if we're no longer able to speak for ourselves, whether that means they are in a nursing home or they're sick or at their deaths. And one thing we really strongly encourage too is to make sure that they keep their trusted advisors involved in those decisions. So letting their financial planner know what their plans are, letting their CPA know, making sure their attorney understands the family dynamics. So we think that I think that the more you can communicate that with your family members, the easier it will be. So where we see a lot of conflict is when there's a surprise. So there's a health crisis or a death, and maybe one of the children knows what's going on, but the rest don't, or maybe nobody knows what's going on. So you can avoid a lot of that conflict if you just communicate your wishes in advance. And like I said, let your trusted advisors know, here's what we're thinking, so that they then can also help encourage the kids to follow along with those plans.
Right. Thank you, Jennifer. Yes. I think back to my own experience with my parents and, my mother saying she would never move out of the house. And then, my dad coming down with an illness and that was the instigator to get them to move out and so forth. But, I think about, different families with different levels of financial assets and wherewithal. And there's a lot of confusion, I think, around paying for long-term care, whether it be at a facility or home care, and what programs might exist and how difficult it might be to be eligible for a Medicaid program, for example. So maybe you could speak to any changes or trends or what people should know about funding the additional costs of aging.
So we see clients a lot in emergency situations. So mom or dad need to go into a nursing home, for example, or move into assisted living, and it's can be complete chaos. So no one knows what mom and dad's financial situation is. Mom and dad maybe not don't even know. So again, pre-planning is key. What we encourage our clients to do is just meet with your attorney, figure out, okay, if I do have a health crisis, what can I afford? Where can I afford to move? So in the Cincinnati area, we see prices for long-term care varying wildly. So you can have a very inexpensive living arrangement in assisted living all the way to an extremely expensive nursing facility. So planning ahead is key. There are only really three ways to pay for long-term care. You either pay privately, you have long-term care insurance, or you rely on Medicaid. And it's a little dangerous to talk to your neighbors and friends about Medicaid because everyone's situation is unique and the laws are fairly complex. So what we encourage people to do, if it's too late for long-term care insurance, or you don't think you can pay for your care privately. Just meet with an attorney for an hour and figure out, okay, if I do have a health crisis, how am I going to become eligible for Medicaid? What's the best path moving forward? Because there are lots of options out there for Medicaid planning so that your family isn't destitute. So you don't run out of all of your assets paying for this care.
Thanks for that, Jennifer. I'm curious, as we talk to clients about the cost of care, and our motive really in this is everybody should have a plan. No matter what your plan is, you need to have a plan. And we talk to it maybe like three legs of a stool in terms of paying for care. So you've got, your assets, your income, and you've got potentially an insurance policy that could help cover that. Obviously, Medicaid would step in, from an asset standpoint if things were depleted. I'm curious your thoughts on the funding, especially with Medicaid. If you're seeing any trends or you have any rules of thumb around, at what point does someone just plan for qualifying for Medicaid versus maybe considering, looking at if they're eligible and it's cost effective and all that kind of stuff, but looking at like a policy to help protect some of that care. Do you have a threshold where you see, it makes sense maybe more to spend down assets versus kind of trying to reinsure that?
Yes, absolutely. So what I normally look at is if you have relatively modest assets, you probably can't afford the premiums on a long-term care insurance policy. And so it might not be too difficult to get onto Medicaid. So if you're in a situation where, I don't want to put an exact dollar amount on it, but if you have, assets below $500,000 even, it could be that you can qualify for Medicaid pretty easily. Recently, Medicaid has changed their rules, and so IRAs are now exempt resources. So we have a lot of clients who a few years ago would have been fairly difficult for them to spend down to Medicaid. But now a large chunk of their assets are exempt and don't count anyway. So those people actually could be in a great position to become eligible for Medicaid. And then you have your wealthier clients who can easily absorb the cost of care, especially in assisted living, that we're not worried about so much. I think it's the people in the middle. So if you think of the people where it's going to be really painful to pay $10,000 to $20,000 a month for a nursing facility, and they're going to run through their assets fairly quickly, but they have enough assets that they can't easily become Medicaid eligible. Those are the clients that we say you should really talk to someone like you and say, how can I get a policy? How much is this going to cost? We've seen that really help those clients that are sort of in that middle range. And then for even our wealthier clients, sometimes having a long-term care insurance policy is just provides you with, you can sleep at night better knowing, okay, I'm going to have some extra income come in if, I need to go into a nursing home or if my spouse needs to go into a nursing home.
Yeah, that's great. And one of the things where for clients that can consider the long-term care policy, what we've kind of talked about it, one of the topics we bring up to clients is lifetime total tax. And with the IRA money, a lot of clients, retire from a company that's maybe their primary asset source, but to pay for care from an IRA increases your taxable income,
That's right.
whereas insurance proceeds are tax-free. So we definitely try to balance that dynamic and helping plan for that. Well, maybe a good transition, because we were talking about paying for care and the types of care, is to introduce our next speaker, Aaron Stapleton, who is the founder and CEO of Trinity In-Home Care, which he started in 2012 as Queen City Home Care, and for several years has also served on the board of the Home Care Association of America. And in our experience, and I think statistically speaking, since most care starts at home, Aaron, why don't you kind of bring us into your world? What are trends that you're seeing? What are things that people should be aware of when starting to think about their care needs?
Yeah, hey Chris and Steve, thanks so much for having me on here, and I'm really excited to bring some hopefully some new information uh, to those who are listening today, and to just give a little bit of background because I understand that a lot of people don't fully understand what home care is, or there's a misconception. I want to just give a little bit of a background. There's what we consider three buckets of home care. There's hospice, which is end of life care. There's skilled care or home health, which is there to help you to get better, typically after a hospital or rehab stay. And both of those are overseen by CMS. So your Medicaid, Medicare, your major medical insurances are going to pay for those services. And those services are typically reactive. Something has happened that has caused a company to need to come in and assist you in your home. What we are is considered non-medical home care, or private duty. You might have heard that. And the difference is we're considered more of a proactive resource. And so we typically come in before an issue has happened to help our clients stay safely in their home and stay out of the hospital. And that home can be any home setting. We can assist in your brick and mortar home. We can assist if you live in an independent or assisted living facility. We can assist if you have skilled home care or hospice in, where the two of those can't work together because they're both being paid by that same insurance, right? So if we look back, about the early 1990s is whenever non-medical home care really got started. There were some smaller companies who were kind of doing this independently, but they say that it really started with a franchise system called Home Instead, which many people have probably heard of in the early 1990s, that were helping people across the country. And so our industry is fairly new. We have evolved over those 35 plus years to make sure that we're helping people stay safely in their home, and also that there are specific guidelines as to how to properly care for people in their home. And so that can really vary as far as the care needs that are provided to our clients. And that can be everything from your what's called ADLs, or activities of daily living. So that's typically your personal care. So somebody's assisting you kind of hands-on. Think of bathing, feeding, dressing, transferring, toileting. Those are the ADLs, or personal care, that we can provide. We also can provide what's called IADLs, or instruments of activities of daily living. And those are typically hands-off care. So think of like light housekeeping. Maybe it's getting too hard for you to do your laundry and take it from the washer and dryer and back to to your bedroom, or wherever you house your your clothes. Or maybe making meals is tough for you to do on a daily basis. Or even getting transportation to and from a doctor's appointment or a hair appointment. These are all things that we can help with. And what we see is a lot of our care, because we are being proactive. You can start very small and build up as you actively age in place, and continue to build that relationship with that caregiver whenever you start to need more care. So that's really what we see as a great way to start in the industry, and kind of dip your toe in, is start to get some care with those IADLs. And then whenever you start to need the personal care, it's not a stranger just coming into your home. It's somebody that you've built a relationship with.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you, Aaron. Again, I think back to my experience with my family, and there was the need for both, non-medical care as well as a little bit of skilled care at different times. And so how do how is that? Can coordination of all of that be difficult? Do you guys help with that aspect, or what do you recommend along those lines?
Yeah, I think this is one of the keys of working with a professional agency. Coordination and personalized care is very important. And so one of our key values is making sure that we're communicating with what we consider the community around the client, right? And so sometimes that includes the family members, and sometimes that includes other agencies, whether that's a skilled home care agency, a hospice agency, to make sure, number one, that we are scheduling not at the same time, that we're not having our aide come in at the same time that you have your registered nurse coming in to do a check, or physical therapy coming in to assist you. But then also making sure that we are communicating with that skilled home care agency any changes in condition. And the way that I like to use an analogy is skilled home care, I look at as more of a picture. They're typically in for about an hour per visit, whoever's in there. And so they're getting a picture of where you are in that period of time. Whereas non-medical home care is typically a video, because we're in for longer periods of time. Most of the time, it's about 4 hours or above. And so in that time, we can get a real life picture of how you can or cannot do something. And that helps us to, again, create a better personalized care for you, not only for our company, but also for the skilled home care as well.
Thanks, Aaron. Curious, what are some signs, that our clients, again, regardless of age, maybe there's a younger client whose parents are beginning to age, but where, it would be like the trigger saying, hey, maybe I need to talk to, maybe I need to reach out to someone like you to learn a little bit more. What are signs that would be that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And Chris, I think the first answer to that is don't wait for the first signs to have the conversation. Like Jennifer said, proactive care and conversations are important. I think in our community, we are very, proactive in setting up things like how we're going to retire. But we hate to kind of talk about aging and what we're supposed to do, because I think the mentality is, well, that means that I'm on the winter of my life. And I think, what we like to say is, we're here to give you the best day possible. It doesn't mean that you're at the last days of your life. It's to make sure that we're letting you keep your independence, and that we're helping you throughout that process. And so I would say, if there are key trigger signs, the easiest one is if your loved one is having multiple hospitalizations. That's a big one. The second would be, and one that I think is a kind of overlooked, is malnutrition and not getting enough fluids. And I think sometimes we think as we age, we're supposed to get frail. And that's not necessarily the case. And if someone is getting frail, it could be because they're not eating the proper food, and or they're not drinking enough liquids, right? So some of the things that will land you into the hospital a bunch, especially as you age, are things like urinary tract infections. And so those typically are telltale signs that we're not getting enough fluid, we're not flushing our body enough. And sometimes there are just ways that we can prevent that, right? Again, from being proactive. I would also say, if you're seeing consistent bruising, if, every time you're coming in, your loved one has a bruise somewhere, that probably means they're consistently falling and they need some help, right? And then any memory issues. So not all memory issues are dementia. And so I think sometimes whenever someone gets forgetful, we either go all the way to, oh, this person has dementia, or, we don't want to recognize it because of the potential risks on down the road. But that can also be something that can be helped sometimes with just companionship and having someone there to continue to stimulate their brain.
Well, and what about, once someone's working with a firm like yours, at what point should people go, you know what, maybe we need facility care? Maybe staying at home is just not in the cards at some point. How do you advise, how do you participate in that discussion, and what are some ways for people to identify needing to move beyond home care?
Yeah, I think, the first thing is whenever you're bringing in a company like ours, again, because a lot of it is coming through family funded or private pay, reaching out to your financial planner like Chris and Steve to say, hey, how can we best utilize the funds that we have to keep this person where they want to be? And that could be, again, in their brick and mortar home. It could be in their independent or assisted living facility. Because a lot of what we see is people just don't plan to live as long as they have, right? And that is not anything against your family members, the individual. It happens. We had one client who lived to be 103, and they were like, we just didn't plan for this. And eventually they had to stop our services because they just weren't planning for 103. Well, how many of us are, right? So I think the first thing is having conversations with individuals like yourself of realistically, how do we make this money work for us as long as possible? And then the second part is whenever the need shifts to more than you can than you can afford, right? There is 24/7 care that's available by our company, but that can be a lot more expensive than having someone go into an assisted living or a nursing home. And so those, I think, again, the finances come into it. The one thing that I will say, because we do work side by side with facilities, because there are times where people go into a facility, let's say a memory care, and they think, okay, I have this person in a controlled environment, but what you have to understand is there's not one-on-one care there. And so if you have someone who is an elopement risk, who is always trying to get out and sometimes can. If you have someone who is a consistent fall risk, that facility might tell you that they need to utilize a company like ours for that one-on-one care. So I think some of that is we definitely work with assisted living facilities. We definitely work with memory care, but you also have to understand that sometimes that one-on-one care is needed in those facilities as well.
Great, thanks. Well, as we wrap up our time here, one question I would throw out to both of you, and it's an important one. It's a tough one. It's a sad one that, we need to talk about this, but, maybe some advice either through the anecdote of your own professional experiences, but in terms of the elder abuse, the fear or the reality that some people are taken advantage of as they're aging. And Jennifer, I'll start with you. Any thoughts, advice around, protecting our loved ones from some type of abuse?
I would go back again to making sure that you have informed your family, you keep your family involved, and you keep your trusted advisors involved. So the broader your network is, I think the harder it is for someone to come in and take advantage of the elderly. So oftentimes you're being abused by a family member. Oftentimes, though, it's someone who comes in, sees someone who's isolated, and comes in and abuses an elderly person. So I think the more engaged you stay as you get older, the harder it is for someone to come in and take advantage of you. So again, just like with your estate plan, just like with your family, try to stay involved in the community. There are always going to be people out there who try to take advantage. Especially of the elderly. So I think the more contacts you have out in the community, the better. And so unfortunately, we do see this quite often. And I think it's often, though, it's with our clients who are very isolated.
Yeah, I would completely agree with everything that Jennifer said. I think it's part of the reason why we say all the time that it is best to go with a company rather than a private caregiver, because a lot of times, if you have that oversight, if you have those individuals who are able to supervise, it makes the chances less likely. Now, the one thing that I would say to add on to what Jennifer said is, there are times where elder abuse happens and it's not intentional. People think that they're doing the best thing for their loved one. They think that, hey, mom wants to stay at home and she has dementia, but we don't have the funds to keep her at home, so we're going to lock her inside, right? Which is, yeah, again, I think sometimes people get into the stress of the environment, and they make decisions that either one, aren't fully thought through, or two, aren't definitely aren't in the best interest. But they're trying to do the best with what they have. And so I think from our standpoint, again, the more resources that you have and use, the more likely you are to set that person up for success. And so utilizing multiple areas is key.
Great. Yeah. And, for us, we have steps in place where we're looking for, one, we have trusted contacts. So if we need to speak with someone about our concerns, we've got, people in place. And then we're also looking for, changes in, how they're working with us and requesting things and being conscious on an ongoing basis. And so I think we all play a role in that. Well, I just want to, as we conclude our time, thank you again, both Aaron and Jennifer, for participating today. Great content. For those listening into this, contact information on the screen that you can reach out with any personal questions. We're here to help and here to make connections as well. So again, thank you so much for your time, and appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Jennifer.